earlier. So let's see what this photographer has said and any additional things that I would add into that. Working as a full-time photographer for 13 years now. Let's see what he says, if I agree with it, or if I have anything to add into it.
So I'm here telling them to you right now. Really quick, before we get started, I just want to mention that we are running flexibility that your camera has. Give you the most flexibility.
Shooting in manual. Okay, shooting in manual. Before he gets into that, my advice on that one is, figure that one out. It's something which I certainly did straight away. Coming out of auto was, or even being in auto was something I never really used that much in terms of exposure settings. So once I got my first DSLR, the Nikon D90, I think it was, 12 megapixels, or was it the D80? One of them. And that one was great to get a camera where you could actually change the aperture, find out a thing called depth of field, and working with how ISO, when you increase it, is brighter, but you also degrade the quality of the image, and also how when you change aperture, you get different aberrations, such as there's more chromatic aberration, but there's also sometimes more vignetting around the corners and all that kind of stuff. So there's a whole lot of learning to going into once you become a photographer or interested in photography, and shooting in manual is a great way to learn the pros and cons of certain settings going forward. So let's see what else he's got to say. Let's see what he's got to say about it here.
Ability that your camera has to offer. Now, I know that manual settings can be a little bit scary at first, but once you start diving into them, they really do become pretty easy. Now, if you don't know what each individual setting on your camera does, we do have a video dedicated to starting out with photography, so I'll put the link to that up in the top of the video.
Pretty much nobody can do a video on YouTube without advertising them. He's already advertised himself twice in the first 40 seconds. That's pretty good. Well done. Good advertising.
So you can go check that out. And one of the cool things about doing your settings manually is that you can customize your camera to fit exactly into your workflow. On most modern cameras, you have the ability to map wheels and dials and that kind of thing, so you can set that camera up exactly to how you want it.
Right. That's something I would disagree with that. Mapping your camera set wheels and dials to how you like it, I would say don't. I would say you learn how the camera wants it done. There's literally teams of people working on the ergonomics of any camera that you're buying just now. And if you are, and they'll figured out and stress tested whether the aperture button should be at the top corner or the other ringy bit or something like that. Us as a photographer should learn how the camera's been set up and follow that. Especially, here's the biggest reason I would say that. So don't map it up to, I like it in a different way and all that kind of stuff. Because if you, for some reason, have to give your camera to someone else on a shoot, let's say you're at a wedding and you're like, okay, you've got to the point of being a wedding photographer and you've got your special camera, but then your cameraman number two goes, I need to do it while you go off to the toilet or something. There's my camera, and they go, I can't change the aperture. What's going on here? Or if you get to the stage where you're teaching someone something about photography, and they go, we've got the same camera. How do I change the aperture? You go, you do this, and they go, that doesn't do it. And I'm like, oh no, that's how I set it up on my camera like 3 years ago. I have no idea how to do it. So my advice, definitely don't set it up to how you like it. Set it up, you learn how the camera is set up. Because it just means your flexibility to move to somebody else's camera or somebody else to move to your camera isn't completely destroyed there. So one little, go in manual, but don't change the camera Don't change the camera setup.
Now, the next thing that I want to talk about might come as a surprise to you, and that is that the lowest aperture on your lens is not always the sharpest. In fact,
I think whenever people get into photography, if you get really into photography, you become a pixel peeper, you'll be totally into all this kind of stuff, whether it's super sharp or not. And I would say sharpness is very important for landscape photography, maybe, but you're shooting far away, you're going to be in all hyperfocal distances. And yeah, granted, your maximum aperture, the widest aperture you can get, certainly causes a softness to certain levels in the image. And it can also be much softer around the corners. You've got your thing. So yeah, the widest aperture isn't necessarily the best. With micro four thirds, the cameras which I use these days, for example, this one, the Panasonic G9. Was it the G9? GH5? GH9? Don't know what it is. Doesn't say. Panasonic Micro Four Thirds. I have this one at an f4 constantly. Well, that is the widest angle lens, and the image quality is spot on throughout the image because it's such as 7mm. It's super wide. But what I would also say is like, don't worry about it. You know, don't get hung up on how sharp the pixels are. Don't get too hung up on how strong the vignetting is going on there. That's for pixel peeping going on there. Don't worry about that. No one is ever really going to notice.
In fact, in most cases,
unless you're printing to a massive like poster size, maybe somebody would see it somewhere. But most likely, your issues will be camera shake, hand shake. So those being two different things, like your hand shaking and then the camera shaking as the shutter goes up, and object movement in the frame and shutter speed rather than.
It's probably not the sharpest aperture on your lens. On most modern lenses, you want to stop down at least 1 or 2 stops so you can get the maximum sharpness out of your lens. Now,
that is a fact. Yep, not going to disagree with that. That is a fact. But I would say don't worry about it.
Yes, if you stop down your lens, you're not going to get the most bokeh out of that lens, but you are going to get the sharpest image possible, which in reality is really what we're going for. Now the next...
Is the sharpest image more important than... For example, here's a fantastic example. Is a picture of my dog. Naturally, she's over in the rule of thirds. But also at the same time, it's not a case of you have to be hardcore about it. You can. You don't need to worry about it too much. But yeah, it's something which if you have a photographic eye, you will naturally be doing that type, or at least cropping in to the image so it is that way.
Now, one more thing that I like to do is I shoot a little bit wider than what I want my final composition to be.
Perfect advice. Yeah, absolutely. You can always crop in. You can't crop out. That you can cop out, but you can't crop out.
And the reason I do that is so that in post I can always crop in and I can move my image around to fit the exact framing that I want.
Yep.
Most of the modern cameras have a high enough megapixel count that you're able to do that. Like for instance, my EOS R here has a 30 megapixel sensor,
So and again, people getting still hung up about how many megapixels the camera has. I remember when Nikon came out with the Nikon D3X and it was a 24 megapixel camera and everyone's like, that's too big. So yeah, if you've got a 12, anything above a 12 megapixel image, you're absolutely fine. Unless you're cropping into a tiny section, but yeah, you wouldn't be doing that.
In on my images pretty easily. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, we are running a giveaway over at
Advert 3. Okay, so 3 adverts into
down below, and you can use that link to sign up as well.
Hardcore advertising. Well done.
So moving right along to tip number 4, this is probably my favorite part of photography, and that is printing your photos. And in my opinion, this
printing photos. The other option I would like to recommend is not just printing photos, but printing books of your photo. Here's my advert. Here's my book, my photography book. Oh, look at this. And you can do self-publishing. Look at all the information you can get here. Look at all that. Look at that. Isn't that lovely? That's getting there with photography. I'm going to do my own advert. There you go. Oh, it still smells so fresh. So yeah, absolutely printting out your own photos. Don't just think about printing them out as little as, you know, don't feel you need to print them out as a photo. Always good. Always buy some frames. Whenever you see them on a discount anywhere, simple black frames always look good. But definitely putting them into a book as well, into self-publishing. You can go through blurb.com, and you can print out and you can create your own photo album. Have I got another one actually? And well, certainly you do it with weddings and stuff, but no, can't see another one. So yeah, highly recommend printing. And also finding the hassles of printing, but also just if you've got spare time, creating a piece of art in a book as well.
This is seriously one of the most underrated aspects of photography. To me, there's just something special about being able to hold a photo that you've taken in a physical, tangible format.
Absolutely.
There's really nothing else like it. Now, one more added benefit of prints is you can actually sell them to make a little bit of money as a photographer. I've made a pretty decent amount of money just by selling some prints, and it's something that you don't really have to do a whole lot of work for. Now, tip number 5, and my last tip for this video, is to invest in your glass. Date the camera, marry the lenses is something that my friend Tony has told me.
Date the camera, marry the lenses. Yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, you're right. I have changed camera, but I've kept all the lenses. Yeah, I've married the system that I'm in. So I'm in Micro Four Thirds. I'm in Panasonic. I even tried to go in the Micro Four Thirds, but with Olympus. It's like, no, not digging it at all. So, but I've stayed with all the lenses that I've got. I used to be Nikon, used to be Canon, then Nikon, and then back to Canon, and then Panasonic. And ever since I've been at Panasonic, I've just never left. But yeah, invest in the lenses. Yeah. You can always upgrade your camera, and it will be better. But if you buy a good lens, it will always be a good lens, no matter what camera you put it on. So yeah, highly agree with that. So we're 3 minutes in, he's done his tips.
Numerous times over the past
Suspect
couple
he'll
of
have
years.
another advert for himself.
Camera tech changes money of all time of years, and the lens is every bit of 10 years. While new lens tech...
And what I will say is secondhand as well for photographers that are leaving certain brands. So you might have a photographer leaving their Canon, and they're going to Micro Four Thirds. There might be lots of Canon gear for sale that you can get for half price compared to new, and they are so expensive.
Is awesome, and those new lenses from Canon and Sony are absolutely... I hope these tips were helpful for you.
Yes, they were.
Down there, make sure you hit the video. Until then...
Okay, yeah, I liked his tips there. But yeah, my main argument against him would be change the camera setup to meet your own needs. I highly recommend you learn how the camera is set up so that you are able to at least jump from one camera to another, and you know it should all be in the same kind of ecosystem of style of setup in terms of stuff like that. But yeah, otherwise, good advice there. I wonder if there's any comments on this. Agree with the solid tripod. We didn't talk about tripod. Okay. Manual but auto ISO. Oh no, I wouldn't say auto ISO. That really messes things up as well. Auto ISO is great when you know what you're doing, but certainly if learning, don't go auto ISO. In fact, I don't know how auto ISO. I never use auto ISO. I do a lot of property photography. So the settings I'm adjusting all the time. Aperture always is at f4. That's fine. On my Micro Four Thirds, 7mm, f4. Change the shutter speed and change the ISO. I don't ever go into auto ISO because I don't know how that would work with flash. How it would figure it out. Because once you bring flash into photography, it's another thing. That's another thing. What I would advise to, would I advise this to other photographers? So anybody new getting into photography, my advice, what I did is I got really into flash photography, got multiple flashes, learned how to do different types of lighting, got my umbrellas, got my stands, got my ring lights and all that kind of stuff. And I really enjoyed the science, the creativity of art, light manipulation with flashes and manipulators and umbrellas and all that stuff. But it's complicated as hell for somebody that is just having a passing interest. So if you're just like, yeah, I'm into photography, and they're like, okay, you can buy a Nikon Speedlight for £400 or £500 now. In fact, just the other day I was using, I was doing a model photo shoot, and I was still using my, these must be 10, 12 years old Nikon Speedlight SP SB 900s. When I bought these, were £330, and they still go strong. Like, invest in good flashes. These haven't stopped working. They're fantastic. So if you really want to do portraits and stuff like that, learning about flash is definitely intensive. If you're just got a passing interest in photography, yeah, get good glass, get a good camera, get a good tripod. I'd never use a tripod. Never use a tripod. I can't really, unless you need a tripod for your type of photography. But even like landscape photography, don't use it. Portrait photography, don't use it. I only would use a tripod if I need to hold my camera somewhere and not be holding it. Or if you're doing like star photography, maybe there. But yeah, I see very little value. But certainly for a new photographer, it's great because then you can do your long exposures. You can do your first curtain, second curtain, light exposures for like traffic and movement and stars and lights and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it is fun. But actually, I would say probably don't invest in a good tripod until you know that you need a tripod for the type of photography that you enjoy doing. Oh, that's a statement. That's a phrase. I'll keep that. There you go. That's my advice. That's what I would say. Don't buy heavy. Don't buy hardcore gear until you know the type of photography you want, and then buy the hardcore gear that you want that would be the best for that type of photography. Boom, done. Okay, right, there you go. See y'all later. Bye-bye. What I would say, don't buy. Oh, still not finished. Finished.